Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, my fellow Chibits. Today, I'm here to bring you a manga chapter review of Toriko. Chapters like this is why I love Toriko, because even though this chapter, as a brief summary, it's just getting from point A to point B to the civilization in Area 6, there is still a lot of information to grasp from this chapter. For one thing, the entirety of the civilization is inside of a giant-ass clam, like this shellfish clam, and it's fucking massive. And it's just, seeing the size of this thing and how big it is crazy. So, it kind of explains now how the civilization could be able to live inside of the clam now, if you think about it, because, you know, it was inside of a giant-ass clam that probably has a hard fucking surface, you know, a shell surrounding it, because, I mean, this is in the gourmet world, so of course some things are going to have some steroids inside of it to be able to survive the waters and crazy shit that goes on in the gourmet world. So obviously, this, you know, clam is very, very fucking strong. So we kind of got some clarification with that of how the civilization has kind of survived, but there was a lot of interesting setup with this chapter that really shocked me. For one thing, we found out about, like, this creature called Dawn Slime. It's a food spirit. And from what we see in this chapter, it's very subtle, but the Dawn Spirit stopped the Golden Chef from talking. Gigi was in the middle of talking, and he was talking about how, like, Dawn Slime could hide or something. It has, like, this ability to hide, and then you had it to where the Dawn Slime just did like this. He shut him up, and was like, shh, like that. And so whatever Dawn Slime told Gigi to stop, it's definitely set up for the future of this arc. Most likely the finale of the Another arc. But I like that. I really like that. Toriko usually has these very subtle setups that have the exact same type of setup with the beginning of the Pair arc. If we think about it with, you know, Kaka, or the fake Kaka. That was kind of actually very similar to how that was done, and so you gotta like it how the mangaka of this series actually does stuff like that with subtle setup with, you know, the build up towards the end of the arc. So let's get into the other point. So Chiyo gets a little bit of characterization in this chapter. As we know from Chiyo, she used to, as we know, she used to be on the enemy side because of her lost son, her son's death, and she, you know, wanted to have her son come back. And with the chapter, we finally get a little bit of characterization of what really happened to her son. She kind of fleshes out of what really happened to her son and what time happened when she was with her son before his final days. She lets Komatsu know, and she comes around and says, like, he was attached to nothing but, like, tubes in his final days, and eventually on his last day, he got detached from the hospital. He got to go to a restaurant with Chiyo and the father, and all of a sudden, you know, his condition took a turn for the worse, and he died. And you had it to where Chiyo said, like, she's really upset that she could not give her son a proper home-cooked meal. And, I mean, out of all these things, like, she took him to a restaurant first thing after he got out of the hospital, you know, just to celebrate, which is understandable. Usually that's what families do when you have someone that gets out of a hospital. They tend to, you know, go celebrate, go to, like, a restaurant or something like that, and go have, like, a family meetup or, you know, have some fun time together. And so, to see how that was done, I mean, come to find out how his condition took a turn for the worse after he left the hospital, and Chiyo couldn't make him any food or anything like that, and I mean, he just died. It's pretty upsetting. It's pretty damn upsetting. And we kind of find out the reason why Chiyo took a ride to Area 6 Another is because she was quite interested in the back channel, because she wants to be able to see her son. So, judging by the way this is going and with the setup with this chapter, I'm going to assume that Chiyo is probably going to meet her son in the back channel, or some form of her son, and she's going to be able to have some form of acceptance and be able to move on. Because from what we found out, it's the only thing that can be taken into Another that's with food-wise is Another, like the food dish Another, like that's the only thing that can be taken into the back channel. And if that's true, that means that the way this was introduced also in this chapter at the exact same time Chiyo wants to give food to her son, if, you know, she could, it's very obvious that this is obvious setup for Chiyo probably meeting her son in the back channel or whatever, probably to communicate with him and have some final, you know, closure on that plotline of Toriko. But there's also something very interesting that was fleshed out in this chapter. For one thing, we come to find out the only way to, like, prepare certain things, like in the food world, like to get the, you know, the food dishes in the food world, you have to get, like, these special golden, like, chef utensils and stuff, like, that's made in this area. Supposedly there's certain materials you can make in this area to be able to fix food to be able to go into the back channel. So, a lot of setup going on in this chapter of Toriko with along the lines of that. And that's why I think a lot of us really like Toriko, because it usually has a lot of these different types of setups, along with, you know, a very simple or simplistic chapter. Because, I mean, thinking about it, this chapter, usually it'd be very simple. It's just a chapter, majority of us would be like, okay, it's just a chapter, you know, going from point A to point B, you know, they're making it into the civilization. But for some reason, the mangaka takes it to another level and tries to introduce new elements to the series while giving characterization to a lot of characters and fleshing out certain details about the area, especially finding out about the 7 Beasts. Now, that instantly, when I saw about the 7 Beasts in this chapter, it made me think of the previous area, you know, the Monkey King's area. It made me think about how the Monkey King, how he had this, like, hierarchy or monarchy to where he had those, you know, monkeys underneath him and their own, like, different strong monkeys. Well, that's exactly what these 7 Beasts kind of reminded me of, and if you remember a couple chapters back, you have to where GG, he stated, like, this area is one of the hardest areas in Gourmet World, and now if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, because if there's creatures that are kind of similar to one of the 8 Beast Kings in this area, and you have it to where these other 7 Beasts are, like, on par with Well King Moon, that's kind of fucking scary. So, obviously, these 7 Beasts are going to be quite deadly. We get to see a glimpse at one of these in this chapter, actually. We get to see the King Coral. He shoots, like, this giant-ass coral off of his side, and it travels and follows Komatsu's group into the shell. So, very fucking creepy. Like, it's very creepy. And this is just one of them, and there's 6 others that we have to think about. So, yeah. I mean, I'm liking the setup here. I'm liking the setup with this chapter of Toriko. I'm quite shocked, actually, with the pacing of this chapter, because I didn't expect to see Komatsu and the gang already reach the civilization, because, as I said in my last chapter review, judging by, you know, all this individual setup with each individual character going on to represent different areas or arcs, you know, like, you know, how we're gonna have, like, you know, every individual food dish for God being set up, it's obvious that this is probably the final in-game setup arcs for the final battle of the series. And for us to already reach this already, it kind of shocked me with that pacing, but regardless of that, very good chapter. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. You all have a wonderful day or not wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.